All right. Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending on where you're coming in from. We are going to be talking about getting to know M365 A to Z. I'm also not a huge slide person. I love to just demo and kind of go through it there. So I do have a few brief slides we'll go through, and then we'll go straight over to actually seeing some of this stuff. Okay. So my name is Stacy Deere. I am a Microsoft Office and Apps MVP. I own a company called Focal Point Solutions based out of Cincinnati, but essentially everywhere. You'll find my contact information out here and how to get a hold of me through social and whatnot. If you ever have any questions or anything like that on things that I've talked about in sessions, feel free to reach out. No strings attached, just feel free to reach out and ask a question.
So, Stacy,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. Can you make it in a presentation mode, the slide?
I only can everybody not see because it's well, I guess it's not that big of a deal in this scenario. Okay.
Yeah, thank you
Is that
so
better?
much. Yeah,
Okay.
that helps.
Yeah, because we're just here briefly, so I always just kind of do it that way. Okay. All right. These are my kids. This is Khaleesi, my Silver Lab, Apollo, and then my Yoda. So everybody's got to have a Yoda, right? Those are my fur babies. And so our agenda today is we're going to do a review of the applications, and I'm going to talk about also application integration. And then I'm going to talk about some best practices in some of these in the applications themselves and then as a whole. Okay. So as we know, Microsoft has a multitude of applications that they have embedded in Microsoft 365. The thing is they keep coming up with more, so I'm sure this will all grow in time. Also, just to let you know, we're hitting these things at a very high level because this is a session. We only got about an hour. I do a workshop thing where I really deep dive into this stuff. So if you ever want to see something like that, you can, check out my events and stuff. So, all right. So what I've done is I essentially have taken the apps out there and I've kind of put them and grouped them together. These are the ones I call the collaboration apps, ones that you use to collaborate with others and share information and all that kind of stuff, right? This comes from the Teams, Planner, Microsoft Forms list, SharePoint, OneNote. I don't list out the Office apps individually because we'll just call them Office apps because everybody's familiar with those, right? So we're going to focus on the ones people mostly are not familiar with, or they're familiar, they've heard it, but they're not exactly sure what they do or how you can use them. Okay. And these are the ones I call the development apps. Now you will see a couple on here that duplicate from the collaboration, and I'll explain. But the main ones for development apps are your Power Platform. So your Power Automate, your Power Apps, your Power BI, right? And you also have your Azure DevOps is out there as well. But then I also throw Microsoft Lists and SharePoint in here. The reason is because a company can choose, or, depending on licensing and whatnot, not to have access to the Power Platform or to use it. However, they can still develop because you can develop in Microsoft Lists and you can develop in SharePoint itself. So they are development apps as well. Okay. And then we go into more of the security compliance or the admin centers. Essentially, I called out security and compliance here because they're like my heart. I'm a huge security compliance governance type person. So, but everything in the admin center as well is essentially an app. You're configuring, you're doing something, but it's all based in the admin center because you're managing it from the tenant level and not site level or individual project type stuff. Okay. So you have a variety of different apps and types of apps, but they're all over the place. And what do they do and how do you use them, right? So the other thing that we're going to talk about is how these things integrate. And this is like the best picture in the world because this is exactly how the integration looks like. Because everything essentially can connect to each other, okay? So before we get into best practices on that slide, we're going to switch over here to an actual environment. We're going to start going through some of these, okay? All right, so up here in your app launcher here, you will notice you'll have your Outlook, OneDrive. Everybody's pretty familiar with those, your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, blah, 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 right? So we're going to go down more to the ones that, like I said, there are less people know about. So like bookings. So bookings is a great tool for many different reasons. For one, it can help your company make money depending on what your company does. And what I mean by that, bookings you can set up to, individuals within your, so think of like making a doctor's appointment is always my best case scenario, best use case. Say you're in a doctor's office and you have 5 doctors. Someone wants to schedule an appointment. They go out to the website, they choose the doctor, and then they can book their appointment. That is essentially exactly what bookings does. You can book a meeting, you can book a consultation, you can tie money to them. So like you could say, hey, a 30-minute consultation, hey, that's $150 or whatever. Or, you want a full hour type of scenario, or you want to sign up for a training, you can set money to that. So when they're booking it, they already know what the cost of that is going to be. Okay. So and bookings has recently been updated and has a lot of new stuff. So if you guys haven't been in there, definitely check that out. Things that we've wanted for a long time. It's a lot of awesomeness. So I'm just going to create test here. But notice I can add a logo if I wanted to, and I can give it a business type down here. So I can like IT support, and I can set my business hours. I could do Saturday, Sunday too. I can make up whatever I want to. And then you actually can invite your staff, right? So I'm just going to add Ryan in here, and he's going to be a team member. And I hit next. And now it's saying is set up an appointment type, right? So here's IT support, 30 minutes, Monday through Friday. So I've got that. So I can make any changes to it, make it a team meeting. Notice it automatically will make it a team meeting. So then you can add other services in here. And then who can book appointments? No self-service, people in my organization or anyone. So if I want to share this with everybody, external to the company, I can say anyone. So anybody that gets the link can book it, or people inside of my organization. No self-service means essentially they're not going to schedule. They're only going to schedule through bookings itself. They're not going to use, like through like your calendar or anything like that. It has to be done all in here. Okay, so then you can just kind of create your calendar. So once you have your link and all that stuff to your calendar, you can send that out, and then people can start using that to book meetings and appointments and stuff with you. It's a great thing so here's one of my big things. So see, here's my link now to that calendar that I can share with people to book on. Okay. So the best practice here is, or the gotcha is, so I have a consulting company, right? But I also have other partners that I work with, and some of them require me to use their email as well, right? So that means that I end up with multiple calendars, multiple emails, all that kind of stuff. This will only look at your primary email. So my email that's attached to this tenant, that's the calendar that it's going to look at to see when I'm busy and when I'm not. So it cannot, at this point, stretch more than just one calendar. I'm hoping at some point they will actually be able to expand on that, because I really, really like how bookings works. It's just slightly not exactly everything that I actually need. But notice here, they have now also included the integration. Remember, I mentioned integrations earlier. So now they have built in a Power Automate integration so that you can do connectors and APIs within this. So anything that essentially has a hook into it, you can use Power Platform tools to pull that information. You pull things using Power Automate. If you're pulling them in, then of course you can tie it to Power BI as well. So definitely different integration points and whatnot there. Great tool though. I love it. I just wish it could do multiple calendars for me. Okay. All right. So we are going to talk about Delve. So Delve is essentially the new user profile. Okay. So, when you had SharePoint on-prem or whatever, it's the information about the individuals themselves and how they connect to others. And of course, Delve is being a little slow. There you go. All right, so this is my Delve. So it's on here. It's showing like information that I've been working on inside this tenant. If I click on me up here, This is where you can see my profile information, people that I'm actively working with. Notice you can see your organizational chart here as well, so you can see all that great information. You can update your profile here, so it works just like the other, but you get so much more information here. The misnomer that people do is I have a lot of clients that come back and say, hey, you need to turn this off because people can't see other people's docs. And I said, keep in mind when they're pulling this information, it's pulling it based off of search criteria. So if they have access to it, they'll see it. But if they don't have access to it, it's not going to show. Okay. So this is valid information you would want others to see when it comes to these documents if they already have access to them. Just an easier way. So we say, like I had someone the other day and they go, I'm so glad you showed me the Delve thing because I knew I was working on a document with you, but I couldn't remember where we were working on it from. So I just went to your Delve and I saw it. It makes it life easier, but it is search driven. So it is permission based. Okay. And then you can easily go down to anybody else that you're connected to as well and see their information. Okay. So also really, really great tool. And Delve has integration because it's actually connected to Azure Active Directory, right? So you're pulling information, from their locations, phone numbers, emails, all that kind of stuff. By having it in here, then you can actually reuse that information to build something like a staff directory or a corporate directory, whatever you want to call it. You can use the information out here in other ways. I had a client that wanted a skills area so they could do skill searching for people within their organization. Where I said, well, if you get them to fill out their Delve profile, there's a section out there for skills and projects that people have worked on. I said, then it's just search based. So essentially we called it a skill page, made it look like, all skilly, right? But literally they were just searching. They were searching on certain things. We did kind of, cut down the filter and stuff like that of what type of stuff it would pull back, but it was just reusing this information. All right. Next, we'll talk about Microsoft Forms. So Microsoft Forms is essentially, it's a survey tool, but it's a form tool as well. It is something that, why I look at it is something that helps you build user engagement within your organization. It helps you train, and I'll show you how, what I mean by that as well. But it's a very powerful tool. I wouldn't look at it as, oh, I'm just creating a form to gather information. It is so much more than that, right? Like you can see just from some of my names here. So I like to do fun things with my team on holidays and whatever, because we're all virtual. I mean, half of it, we all live in different states, some in different country, but what we do is do like a lunch for a holiday and we will do trivia. And so I will create a form that we all send out and, they fill out and all this kind of stuff so that we can have a trivia time. So one, doing company bonding, but also think about what you base your trivia on. So what if it's trivia about your company, right? So then you're educating your users as well about your company. So, and you can, use and, kind of use it for that way. And the other thing that I really like to use Microsoft Forms for is things like training. So I mentioned how do you use Forms for a training tool, right? Well, easy. So example is if you're creating a new intranet or getting ready to go live with a new intranet or a new application, you can use Microsoft Forms to build questions, almost kind of like people remember like gamifying things, right? So like an Easter egg, so like embedding Easter eggs in sites. Well, you can use a form to ask questions about the site or the application. Like, where might you find John Smith's phone number? Right? So they go to the intranet and they, find out where it is and then they answer it appropriately, right? Where do you find this? Where do you find that? Where essentially they're doing it because one, they want to win. Everybody loves competition because you always throw like an Amazon gift card behind it or whatever, right? So everybody will do it because they want to try to win. They want to, get the right answers and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, what you're doing is teaching them the site or that new application. So you're embedding training into something that's fun and engaging for your users. Okay. The one thing I love about forms as well, and I know I say that a lot, but I use forms so much, is it has built-in artificial intelligence. So if I go to new form here, we'll watch this. Now I had a form in there already called project closeout, but watch what happens when I start using some of the same words. So what it did is it went out and says, hey, you have something else that was named pretty close to this. And here's the questions that you used there. Do you want to reuse some of these? So in other words, it's helping me not recreate the, reinvent the wheel. So I can easily just say add them all, or I can just click the ones that I want and then say add the selected 3, and boom, now my form is already started, right? So it really helps you, kind of get ahead and jumpstart some of those processes. And, another way that AI is built in, if I ask it a question, notice I'm asking a question, it's identifying that, hey, this is most likely a yes, no, or maybe type of question, and it will prompt those. And I can as well just hit add all, and they will go in there as well, okay? The other, one of the other big things I think is huge with Microsoft Forms for me. So like here's actually a copy of a project closeout form that I did, right? So there, and I've got next, I got branching and all this kind of stuff in here, Likert, the whole 9 yards. And I've had people say, hey, you know that form you send out at the end of your projects? I want that form. Can you build me one? Well, I can do better than that. Why don't I just give it to you, right? I know you're probably saying you're a consultant, you're supposed to make money, but the problem is here's why why I don't. Because if I go to collaborate or duplicate, I can say share as a template. Now I have a link. I can give this link to anybody. They go into their environment and they paste that link in there, and it's going to come up and do this. Notice it's going to display it. And then it's going to say, do you want to duplicate this form to use as your own? And then if you hit duplicate, you now have that form there, right? That's one of those kind of quick wins that you can do for customers or other people within your organization. Organizations that where you see a lot of reuse, that it's perfect, right? But so it's, it definitely, it is for surveys. It is just to create natural forms. The thing to keep in mind with Microsoft Forms itself is it doesn't have all the like calculations and all that kind of stuff. You can't put code behind your, any of the fields or anything like that. To do that for that, that's when you start switching over into the Power Apps area. Okay. This is more for anything that's just, very low code, no code type of scenario. Integrations for Microsoft Forms, you have Power Automate. By default, responses go into here and you can pull them in, pull it from Excel. But you can't really do anything with it. You just get it in a report format here from Excel. But if you tie Power Apps to this, you can actually, Power Automate to this. When you fill out the form and hit submit, a workflow can run and put that information into a SharePoint list for you. So then you can use that data for something. Examples, I know retail company that I was working for, and they had multiple point of sale locations, and they were literally sending an Excel document to fill in some numbers, and then the spreadsheets would come back, and this lady had to merge them all together and all that kind of stuff. I literally built her a quick and easy form that they could put all that information in, and when they submitted it, then it went into the SharePoint list that had all her other stuff that she already needed. She didn't have to do any of that merging and migrating, right? So you can reuse the information. If it stays in here, you can't really reuse it. You put it in a SharePoint list and you can do a whole lot with it. So Kaizala, not something is something that I use, but essentially it's like it's a chat functionality. Yes, we have Teams and all that stuff, so I don't see a lot of people using it. It's probably not going to come up because I don't use it or set it up, because it is a little clunky. But between like Yammer, notice it said welcome. Between Yammer and all that stuff, it is just between Yammer and Teams, just not something it's it is used a lot, but as you can tell, it goes through the little demo here of kind of what it looks like and what it does. Okay. Some organizations who don't use Teams or whatever, and they want something like that, it's a great tool. Don't get me wrong, it is a good tool, but it just, with all those others, a lot of times people don't tend to gravitate towards it. Microsoft Lists. So this one is, I always find this one funny because people always ask, hey, have you seen Microsoft, that new app, Microsoft Lists? And I was like, well, Microsoft Lists has always existed. What people didn't realize is Microsoft essentially gave it a facelift and put it in the app launcher, but we've always had Microsoft Lists from, the beginning of time with SharePoint. Now they've just given it a facelift to let you do more with it, and they rebranded it, and now everybody loves it, which I'm glad, because there's so much that you can do with Microsoft Lists, right? So the huge difference with Microsoft Lists, though, if you're using Microsoft Lists within your app launcher here, notice it came up, but I can build a list inside of a SharePoint site that looks just like this. The difference is when you go to new list here, and I'll just pull up a blank one here. I can give it a color, a little, is this option here, the save to. So if I select it from the app launcher, I can do the save to, and notice the default one is my lists, meaning that you have essentially a development area to build lists and like kind of get them to work and all this kind of stuff the way you want them to. Okay. So you can easily do that. So you can get them all set up and all that kind of stuff. Now, before you move it, don't put in content. I wouldn't put in content in it though, because if you put my list, if I save this here, it's going to save to my OneDrive. Okay. So if once I get it all built and I like, how it all functions, it works the way I want to, what I would do is really move it over into a SharePoint site. Otherwise, you're going to have to give someone access to it within your OneDrive. Then that list is tied to your OneDrive. And if you were happen to leave the organization after so long of retention, that OneDrive is going to go away. So if it is a production-based thing, just make sure it gets moved. Can you move it once it's in OneDrive and there's content in it? Yes, you can. Is it easy? No. So you can't use a migration tool or anything like that. It's essentially you have to write a script to move everything over. So just keep that in mind. All right. So I can create one here and notice, and then it'll pop up and it'll look just like the normal list that we're used to. And then you can just start adding everything in here. Okay. But from here, Microsoft has added additional things in where you can, so like I just said, if you built one in OneDrive and you now want to put it into SharePoint, you can go from an existing list, choose one of them that you just created that you're ready to move. So like I'll choose issue tracker, and now I can go put it in the site that I need it in, right? So that's just kind of moving it into production. Right? Then the other one is from Excel. So I was really happy that they gave us this functionality now, because you've always been able to import Excel into SharePoint lists, but the thing that you had to do, you had to build a script to do it all. So now Microsoft actually is giving you a tool. You choose your Excel document, got to make sure it's in table format, by the way. And you import it up here, you make sure that your column headings are all right, and you say go, and boom, it imports it all for you, okay? What it does is allowing people to expedite getting to the automation side of, their projects and getting things more automated. When I do when people are migrating, they're like, man, we really want to start automating our processes to save time, money, but how do we get started? Well, this is how you can quickly start, because most of that stuff is being managed in Excel at this point. Get the stuff in SharePoint, and that's step one, because then it's easy to tie your Power Platform to that. Okay. The other great thing that Microsoft has provided is templates, and they keep adding to these, so you always have to check back here and there. So the cool thing with these are, if you select these, you can see all the information that they are. The different columns and how they've got them set up, all that kind of stuff, like choice fields, priorities, all that kind of stuff. If this is close to what you're looking for, okay? So if it's, you've got the columns are right, but maybe there's too many, or you don't have all of them that you want. If this is close, use it, because once you actually say use this template, then you can manipulate it, remove columns, add columns, etc. Okay, but it'll help you save time. Okay. I got a OneDrive, blah, 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 Microsoft Planner. So the PM in me really, really loves Microsoft Planner. I actually use Microsoft Planner to manage every single project within my organization, right? It is literally a task tracker, but essentially a visual one. So like if I just bring this up, notice you can set different buckets here, and then you can create a task, and then you can assign people to the task. You can do start date, end date, does it repeat, priority. You can create a checklist. Do this first, right? Second, third, right? And then as you complete the checklist under the task, right, it'll just mark it closed here, and then notice it'll keep track of it for you. The other cool thing I really like about it is when you assign these tasks and say I'm working on this with somebody, and so we're doing stuff and we're putting comments in here. So when you put a comment in here, that person will get an email, right? They'll get an email with your comment. Now they could click on it and come into Planner to respond, but the great thing is they can just reply to the email itself, and then it will come back and put it in here, so that it keeps all that information together. Okay. Some cool best practices here is if you're doing this for project management, one of the things that I like to do is I set up templates, and I have two different types of templates. So the first one is I have one I just call PMO templates, and then I've got all my different buckets here, and then I've created all my tasks that we typically will have, or some function that we have to do, and I'll have steps. I got them all planned out, right? So then if I have a project that I'm working on and someone goes, hey, I need mock-ups, can you do mock-ups for me? Sure. So I come out here, I already have a plan for them, for their project, and I say, sure, so I just go out here, I copy task, I go find that plan that I'm looking for. So we'll do here, and then I choose what I want. Since I'm copying it, I don't want to bring over the progress or dates. If I put it on the wrong plan, then that's perfect, right? So I'm just doing description, checklist, and I hit copy. So now notice it says my task was copied. And if I go over here, now I see mockups, right? And I could have chose which bucket to put it in as well when I copied it. The other type of template that I do is an actual, a full, a copy of a plan. So I have templates for like migrating SharePoint, migrating Exchange, migrating OneDrive, and all my tasks are laid out, my buckets, everything. I have everything all done. And so the next time I get another project and someone says, hey, I need OneDrive migrated, okay, no problem. I go out here, and then I go to my project, and it'd be OneDrive migration. And then I can go up here, I can copy the entire plan. Right? And it will bring over the descriptions, my checklist, any labels. If I wanted to bring priorities, I could do that as well. And notice I just have to select a group to tie it to, and then copy plan. So these integrate with your group sites. So you're connecting it to a group site, so which means you can see them in teams. The other cool thing is with Planner, especially in project management, you may have all these plans. So here's that one I just did, and all the stuff's there. Is I want to see an overview, right? So for me up here, you get this and you can see which ones are in, and you've got some little minor charting, right? But you don't really have everything as a whole, like a true like PM scenario that you can see across the board of all your tasks and all that kind of stuff, or which projects are in trouble. What you can do, you can integrate Power Platform into this by connecting this using Power Automate and bringing all your tasks into a SharePoint list, right? So you bring those all in there. And then from the list, of course, then you can use Power BI and create dashboards, for your PMO site and stuff like that. So that you essentially get a view of all of your tasks and everything at a high level and a very visual representation. Okay. Like I said, everything integrates with something. All right. So Power Apps. So I won't go in there as it's, it's development, right? But this is where you essentially will start building your forms in there that you have calculations that you want to do, that are just really huge, like an actual application that you're building. So much more complicated than a form. The one thing to keep in mind with Power Apps is never hesitate starting with a Microsoft form, right? So at some point, so you can always have phases to various things. You're not sure what kind of content they're going to want, or it may grow as your company grows or the process that you're building. You can always start out in Microsoft Forms. And then when you absolutely need, the additional type of functionality that Power Apps brings to the table, you can bring that form. All you do is connect it in here. You bring that form into Power Apps, and then so you lose none of your work. You just start building onto that same one. Okay. Power Automate is your actual flows, right? So this is all your workflows here. This is an area I do tell people when you get a chance, and to actually go out here and look, because Microsoft provides a ton of templates for you, right? So you can, you can get started and kind of play with those. So like if I go to create, if you look, here's a bunch of templates out here, right? So one that I use, responses to SharePoint, like that. Oops, oops, where did I go? Oh, here it is. Wrong search. All right, so now it's whittled this down. So now look here, record a form response to SharePoint. So earlier when I was telling you from Microsoft Forms, you can tie a Power App or Power Automate to it to put the information into a SharePoint list. This is the template that I use. I don't go out and start from scratch. I use this template, and what it does is literally it connects you and everything to that, but then it literally just kind of walks you through the steps. So I don't know why that popped up, but okay. But it walks you through the steps. Oh, the Power Virtual. So like here, I got to choose my site, I got to choose my form, all that kind of stuff, right? So pretty easy to get started with Power Automate. Just go out there and work with the templates themselves, and you'll get the hang of it. I literally taught myself by doing that. Power BI, as you guys know, that's where you can build your dashboards, all that kind of stuff. PowerPoint project. Keep in mind the project here is a little misleading. So this connection is actually to project in the cloud. So like if you own project, the actual licensing for project, so that you can do, I can't remember what they're called now off the top of my head, but you pay money for this additional license. This isn't the project like you have on your desktop that you're using. Okay, this is that higher level project. Notice here you got security. We'll hit the admin panel on a few. You've got Microsoft Stream. So this is where when you record any meetings, it goes into your stream. If you if you just want to do a recording, like I can go do a new recording and I can do a screen recording, you can save those out here. These are all now saved in SharePoint. They used to be saved, well, they call it Classic now, but they were saving them in OneDrive, which they were saving them in Stream, then they changed them to OneDrive, and now they're in SharePoint, if that's not confusing enough. All right, so this is just where all of that stuff would live. And of course, you got search and all that. Stream I really like because of the integration immediately into SharePoint, right? So makes it easy. One thing I've never had with Stream is any buffering, because it's self-managing all that, because it's within the environment. So you don't have any of that lag that you typically can get from like YouTube or any other type of a platform integrating it into SharePoint. So I really like how it self-manages all that stuff. Sway. I don't know if anybody's using Sway, but I think it's kind of cool if your company uses these types of things. And what I mean by that is like an internal newsletter, external newsletter. If you do some how-to type of stuff, like recipes or crafts or stuff like that. If you do any of that, it's really kind of cool because what it does is provide you templates to kind of get started. Like if I click internal newsletter, you're going to see where, so notice how it kind of lays it all out for you here, right? And then, so just kind of giving you a guideline that you can start working with. And you can choose different templates on the way you want it to look, the colors and all that kind of stuff. Like I can just start editing. It's going to prepare the template, etc. Right? So it's essentially keeps you from having to start from the ground floor up. So you actually get to, they've already got it laid out. You get it all done, you save it, and you're good to go. Okay? Makes life so much easier. I have a company that does a newsletter every single month. And when I showed them that, the person that does the newsletter literally told me she believes that she will be cutting her curse words down to a half a day because she has this new tool. So I'll take that as a good sign. All right. Teams, Microsoft To Do. All right. So I always like that this is, it starts with a T because it's further down the list, because we've already hit a bunch of things that feed into your Microsoft To Do. Everybody uses Outlook, and they will, if you flag things inside of your Outlook, to say, because you want to follow up on it later. So if a follow-up means that's a task that you need to do. Planner, you're being assigned tasks in there. SharePoint lists, if you've got a where you're assigning tasks within a list of a process, that's you're assigned that task. What this does is bring all of that together. So if you were to see my live one, which I have up, I always have my Microsoft To Do on a monitor all day long because all my tasks are here. Anything that I have flagged important that has come up that I want to, need to get done, anything that I have planned, right? Things that are assigned to me. So by the way, assigned to me are the things that are in your planner or your SharePoint lists that have been signed. And the cool thing is you don't have to go to planner to update these, right? So if I click on this one, here's this information that was entered inside of planner. Notice I can open in Teams if I want to. I can add an additional step if I needed to, add to my day. So if I click that, it goes up here to my day here. And then I can add notes, which is to the comments, and do that all right here. I could literally close this task if I wanted to right here, and I never had to go into Planner. So I can literally manage my day and work on my day right here. Any of your flagged emails would show up here, and any of your any tasks that you happen to create straight here. Now you can create other task lists too. So I have this, I always use this one as an example, like if I have a honey-do list that, I need to go to the groceries, or I need, or a grocery list, I will put it in here. The reason is because every app that I've shown you has a mobile app too, right? So when I leave, or not really leave work, considering I work from home, but when I'm done for the day and I'm out running errands or whatever, I've switched from my monitor that's showing me my Microsoft To Do to my phone. Now that's glued to my hand, and I'm knocking off tasks on that. So it's a very powerful tool. If you've not used it the first time that you log in, it will prompt you 3 questions. And one is like, do you want to connect your planner and bring, I think it's your flagged email as well. And then there's one, I think it's called, if you used Evernote, maybe. It doesn't ever, I believe it's Evernote, integration to that in here as well. Okay. All right. So Visio. Viva Insights, so there's a load of different things out there with Viva, but you got Viva Insights out here. You guys probably see a lot of that stuff, but kind of just seeing where your work habits are. You can create teams for stuff like that, help with your work-life balance. essentially, activities that might be going on that might be important to you. It's not set up in this environment. I've got a new license because I'm doing some stuff with the Viva Explorer, so I'm setting up a whole thing for that. But you can essentially just insights of your day and what you're doing, how to have effective meetings and suggestions. It's just really trying to give you insights to how to make work life better for you. Okay, kind of help you plan better. I love the little emails, though, even though they're slightly misleading, that I get every morning saying, hey, you've got like 4 hours of free time today. And I'm like, you should look at my other calendar. I have none because it only shows from the environment that you're on. But in that email, it also tells me that, hey, these emails came in yesterday and it looks like there's something that needs done on them. And then it's a reminder. One, it's a reminder. And two, it's like, oh, crap, I didn't flag that. So it wasn't on my task list, right? So then I'll go back or if I took care of it, then I'm good. I just need to delete the email or move it to a folder. But it's those things are great tools to help you manage your day and you better. Then we're going to go down. Oops, that is not what I wanted. All right, and we're going to go to whiteboard. So this is, I call it a fun tool, but never underestimate the power of visual representation. So think about when you're in a meeting. So like you're, working on like a network diagram, or you're working on building a new application a new intranet for a client, right? So you can actually just start like they're talking, right? And I can sit here and I can be sharing my screen and they can be telling me what they want. And then I could just be kind of sketching it out here and, putting different things. And then I go something like that. And then they say, yes, I saved this. Then I can use this. And, while I'm working on that. Right. So it kind of helps you do a visual representation. So like you're, because writing does wonders, but sometimes a visual representation of what you're trying to do while the client's sitting there looking at it, it goes a long way. I actually have clients that say, hey, can we use that whiteboard thing all the time? Even though our conversation really doesn't need one, I will find things that I write it up on there because they want to see that type of stuff. They want that visual. So it's very useful tool. You can use it in Teams. All these things you can use in Teams too. So, that's it kind of brings you to the integration piece that I was talking about, where as you've heard, as I've went through these, everything essentially can integrate with something else. And notice then, when you get into, when I said forms, right? So forms, I could connect to Power Automate with a flow, then get something into SharePoint. But then once it's there, I've got the content there. Well, then look, SharePoint, we know integrates with, Power BI. So then I can attach Power BI to it. It kind of goes down the chain, right? So you connect it into one, then that opens doors for some of the other things as well. Okay. So if there's a hook into it, chances are there's one way or another that all these pieces can integrate together. Okay. And then of course we got Word down here, and then Yammer. Everybody kind of knows Yammer's kind of like the company Facebook. So that's those pieces. So then let's go back over here and let's talk about the best practices and kind of wrapping that up. And I know I love to do more deep dive with the individual tools, but I hope that, the high level really helped you understand how you can use and what those do. All right. So let's talk a little bit about best practices for our last few minutes here. So best practices, there's a lot of apps out here, right? And I have heard some people say, just turn it all on and see what they use. Well, that is one approach. However, when doing that approach, things you need to think about. What if you determine that one of those apps isn't compliant for your security, or you've decided that, hey, this is what we use majority. Let's just have everybody use that same application. So that type of work is done here. So everybody knows that's where it's done. So now you've got content in different places doing the same thing, and you've got to then figure out how to get that over there, right? Which is not going to be easy, right? So the other thing is if you give people too much at one time, some things just aren't going to get used. Like if I threw all these apps at you and just said, here, go at it, right? I mean, I'm literally explaining these apps to you. Is someone doing that to your users? Probably not. They're left to their devices to try to figure out what some of these things do, or how to use them. And everybody's gonna have their own opinion on how they're to be used if they're not properly trained. So what I suggest is to do a proper rollout plan, right? But before you do that, you need to determine as a company what apps you're going to use. And the apps that you're not going to use, turn them off. Okay, because otherwise people will use them. You'll have content sprawl in multiple locations and you'll have to support it because they were able to get the content there. And if their content's there, you got to help them make sure that they can use that content or get the content out of there. So you need to decide as a company which apps that you want to use. And then you can easily remove them from the app launcher. Okay. So you can, with policies, conditional access policies, easily block them. You can have exclusions in that policy as well. There's licensing groups you can do that can manage the same type of scenario. So like IT could have them all, but everybody else doesn't, that type of scenario, okay? But identifying which apps you're going to use and what you use those apps for. So that goes to the when do I use what app, right? So this app is used for this. A lot of people say, well, when do you use SharePoint versus Team? And I go, well, they're both SharePoint, so it doesn't matter, right? I have clients tell me, well, we really want people to use Teams and not SharePoint. I said Teams is SharePoint, right? So you've got to understand exactly what the apps are and what they really are, because in my vision or my recommendation is it doesn't matter. I myself, because of my job, what I do every day, I am in the browser a lot. So I access my sites via SharePoint, the browser, more than I do from Teams. I'm in Teams a lot for meetings, chat, and stuff like that. But the other things that I have to do are, I have to do in there. So it's just as easy for me to go to that site because it's just it's a menu option. Click here and go do what I need to do. But I have many people in my organization, they are never in the browser. They only are ever in Teams. It is very based off of how a person works and what they do. Okay. But with these other apps, you need to decide how you're going to use them, like bookings. So some companies, bookings is just not relevant. They don't have a lot of meetings to schedule, or they don't do the consulting stuff or type of stuff that you could put out there. So they don't need it. So if you don't need it, turn it off. Otherwise, someone is going to use it. Okay. So user adoption is key with this stuff, and so is training, right? So all those things are always best practice, and I'm always gonna say that. So what I suggest is to slow roll out your applications. So when you get there, you say, all right, we want to start with these apps, right? So maybe you start with 3. You let them roll for a while. The users, they only had 3 they had to look at. They've kind of grasped it. You've done some training or supplied some training, how-to stuff, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, now they're solid there, right? They're solid. Well, now let's give them a new shiny toy, right? So let's give them a couple more apps, all right? Train them, do some little how-tos, but they only have to focus on 2 because they already learned the other 3, right? You're going to get better user adoption from your users because they're going to be learning at a much smaller segment of new content than everything as a whole all at once. So you will get a lot better user adoption, and it's much easier to train in those little smaller subsets of content than, we went through 10, 12 apps or whatever. That's a whole lot to try to do at once, and people aren't going to retain that. Do them at smaller segments, and you'll have a lot more success with getting users to use the applications, feeling comfortable with them, learning in them, all that kind of fun stuff. And then, as I said, if you are not using the apps, hide them, right? Block them, hide them. one of the biggest things I always tell everybody, people tell me all the time, well, we don't use Sway, we don't use Bookings, we don't use Yammer, we don't use this, we don't use that. I'm like, well, why are they in your app launcher? Well, because they're just there. And I'm like, well, you can hide them. I go, how do you know that people aren't using them? Well, we haven't shown anybody them. I said, you don't have to show them. They know how to click on that, right? So, and when they do some investigating, and yeah, people are using some of the stuff and they had no idea. And so then they kind of backtracked and then cleaned up that app launcher to the things that they want to utilize within their organization. So to me, Microsoft gives it all to you. It is your job to determine what you're going to use and then make sure the rest of it is hidden. Same thing with Teams as well. And I'll show you this because it's a big thing for me, is inside of your admin panel, which, as we mentioned earlier, all those are apps as well, right? So each admin panel, you need to look at them as their own individual apps because you have to go in, configure them, and you're using them and all that kind of stuff. But here you're configuring things for the tenant as a whole and not the individual, right? But if you come into Teams, and if everybody's ever been into Teams and you wanted to add something, I'll show you here. So if I go into, say, this project, and I go up here to the plus sign, you see all these apps out here? If I see them and I can click on them, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to go click on them. I'm going to go see what they do. I'm going to go see if it's something that I can use to help me with my day. However, has the company vetted it? Is it something the company wants to use? If one person uses it and then they can't really share it to anybody else, right? But if they also click on it and I'm putting company content in here, and then they have a problem, guess who has to support it? IT does, right? So if you provide it to them and they can use it and they can click on it, you have to support them. And then you have massive content sprawl in things that you didn't want people in to begin with. So with Teams, if you go into Teams apps here and manage, actually I want the permission policies. Well, actually, if you look here, see how all these say, here's all those apps, right? And then see how they say they're allowed. And then you see the publisher, right? So if I go here, I have options. Notice I can say only show the Microsoft apps. So if I go back here, that would be the Microsoft apps you see up here. So your, Forms, SharePoint, all that kind of stuff, right? Third-party apps were all those apps down at the bottom. So all those like hundreds of apps down there, all you can do is block all those apps. Or I can block apps, block specific apps and allow others, right? Or allow specific apps, block others, however you want to do it. But you can block all those so that they don't see any of them. And then, of course, custom apps are anything that you do purchase, you want to put out there, right? But all those third-party apps, you can literally turn off so they don't see them. And then you don't have to support it. You don't have to worry about content sprawl going all over the place. And it better helps you manage the environment as a whole, right? I mean, because you see all these apps out here that, you're not going to have a choice but to support. Why support things that the company really doesn't want your users to use? Okay. All right. That's what I have. Thank you guys very much. If you have any questions, you're free to ask them. And is there a moderator still in here? Not really sure.
Yes, I'm there.
Oh, okay.
Guys, if you have any question, please feel free to ask those questions here in the chat, Q&A chat. Thanks, Stacy, for a wonderful session.
You're very welcome. It's a mouthful in an hour, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of questions like about that. Can you see those questions?
I do not see any questions. It says chat is turned off for this meeting, so I don't see them.
No, there is a Q&A button.
Oh, the Q&A, but oh, let me see. Oh, up here.
Yeah.
It's circling here. Okay. Is Planner an alternative to Jira? I have to tell you, so I have a partner that has me use Jira, right? And here's the trade-off. If you're doing very simple projects that you don't need like all these different, I mean, and granted, you can build the dashboards if you need them, but there's so much in Jira that they don't use, and I don't know why people would, other companies probably don't use them. To me, Jira is overkill for managing projects. I can build things to suit my needs using Planner and, like I said, Power Automate or whatever to suit the needs that I have in a much more streamlined process than what I see with Jira. So to me, yes, it's an alternative. Yes, Kaizala is going away in 2023. Let's just hope when it dies, it really dies. So, but yeah. If someone creates Microsoft Form and then leaves the company, is it possible to transfer ownership to a different employee? Absolutely. Here, I will show you exactly what you can do for that. That is a great question, by the way. If I go back here to my forms. So when you're in your form, remember where I showed you the collaborate or duplicate thing, right? So if you go in here, you have the share to collaborate. So if I get a link here, and then whoever I send this to now is also an owner of this form. So that is something that I train people to do is like, hey, you won't always be there. You probably have a backup or something, to that, extent. Always make sure you have a secondary on here. Or if someone's getting ready to leave, make sure that they've done that. Oops. Does Whiteboard have a separate permission model for external sharing, or is it managed by? It would be separate. It's definitely not managed by the admin center. Now, in the admin center, you can turn it off for people. I mean, that piece is controlled by the admin center. I'll send you all the session due to work call. No problem. All right, I think I got them all.
Thank you, Stacy, for a wonderful session. And if you can post your channel or LinkedIn in this so that people can reach out to you in case they want to have further questions or connect with you.
Absolutely. Let me put that in. There you go. I just posted that out there in the Q&A for you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy your day.